Connie, I want to welcome you on behalf of the Historical Society and thank you for graciously consenting to share a little history about the 4th of July Festival with us. Connie was a longtime resident of Southport and a tireless community leader who worked with dozens of civic organizations and people and businesses to promote this festival. She served as the president of the Southport Chamber of Commerce and the North Carolina Tourism Council. But for a while, when you said the 4th of July, it was Connie's name that was synonymous with that. And she served as festival president and director of the Pageant for a number of years. And she was instrumental in the growth of the festival, the recognition, and the popularity of it during the 70s and 80s. And I'm just thrilled that you are here to talk to us, tell us some stories about some of the behind-the-scenes work that went on to make that festival so important to this community.
Olivia, I feel like I'm talking to my daughter because you grew up next door to me and your dad was a great friend of mine, so it's my great pleasure to be here with you today. And there's nothing in all these years that I've enjoyed talking about like I do the festival, the North Carolina 4th of July Festival, because I put a lot of years into it, but not just me. And as I explained to y'all before, it was kind of like the Tom Sawyer syndrome, because things that I enjoyed so much, other people wanted to be a part of because we were having so much fun. And there's a lot of confusion because of all of the organizations that were involved with the festival. There's a lot of confusion about who started the festival, and that's something I want to get off our plate right away, because the truth is the city of Southport started the festival. There were a lot of civic clubs that were very active in Southport at the time, and everybody wanted to be a part of everything, but the city of Southport and the mayor at that time was Eugene Tomlinson, and person that worked for the city, and I can't tell you what his title was, but everybody loved him, was Harold Aldridge. And Harold Aldridge was asked by the mayor to be in charge of the festival, or the festivities that were going on in Southport, because back in the 50s they had what they called the Live Oak Festival, and I was fortunate enough to be the queen of the Live Oak Festival, although I was only 17, didn't know what anything was about, but I was queen of the Live Oak Festival. And I did know that we had a parade. Everything was done by the local civic clubs, the Women's Club, the garden clubs, you name it, they jumped in and did things. And it consisted of a little hometown parade where everybody got together and made the floats. The floats were homemade. And local groups played the music. They had a ball at the USO building, and I'm sure y'all have a history of the USO, which is now Southport, the Southport Civic Center. So there's just so much, and you can't really even tell it without stumbling over yourself. So I did, the Live Oak Festival would have continued, except, as most people know, in 1954 we had a terrific hurricane here, and Hurricane Hazel, which I was a big part of that too, and that's another story. But after Hazel, the town was so busy trying to rebuild itself, it didn't have time to think about celebrations. And I did a little research on that, knowing we were going to be talking about it today. And it seems that all through the years, the first documented knowledge of a celebration during the 4th of July was in 1795 when it was just Fort Johnston here. And the troops that were gathered at Fort Johnston and the citizens of the community got together, and they would, play music and dance and sing, and the military would put on exhibitions, and then the ships. And it says, and I love the verbiage in there, and hope you can get it right sometime because I don't have it in front of me, when it says, and the ships that lay at anchor in the harbor shot off cannons commemorating the independence of our country. So I always thought that was so beautiful. And Bill Faulk who was out at Brunswick Town, the supervisor at Brunswick Town at that time, made sure that everybody knew that history. So I certainly did want to include that. But that was the end of the Live Oak Festival as we know it. But it was a community event. And but when I came back to Southport to live was in 63. I came to the beach in 63 and lived there at my parents' cottage for a year, and then when school started, I came into Southport and found a little apartment for me and my kids. And so right away, I was a hairdresser, and right away we started talking about things. But during that time, the early days of the 60s, different organizations would do little things during the 4th of July. And the city had asked Harold Aldridge or the mayor had, to be in charge of some things. And so the city did put on some fireworks. And we didn't have a parade at that time. But the Women's Club of Southport had what they called Heritage House. And they had it at the USO building, and the Heritage House was exhibits of historical documents, apparel, and antiques. It was a big antique show, but there was a lot of hometown heritage tied to it. So, and then the Junior Women's Club decided to do a jewelry art show. So they publicized that was their big deal for the year, was to do this jewelry art show during the 4th of July. And then Miss Betty Leggett, whose husband owned Leggett's General Store downtown, and she was an artist, so she started putting out an art exhibit along the House Street there, right by the post office. But you don't know the post office, where the post office was, I don't guess. But anyway, in front of the post office and Leggett's store. So she had art on the sidewalk, and we had the antique show and the Junior Women's Club's art exhibit. And then so the JCs decided, well, heck, all these people coming into town, we're going to raffle off a boat, make some money for all of our projects. So they bought themselves a boat and had it everywhere. It was all over town, where they thought there was going to be a crowd for months, so they could raise money for their civic projects. And then after that, we were still having a little fireworks, but no parade. So Mr. Aldridge took it on himself in 1979 to send out letters to all the civic clubs, appreciating what they were doing and inviting others to participate as well. So all the civic clubs were to send a representative to a meeting with him to find out what kind of project they would do. So I was the vice president of the Junior Women's Club at that time. And the president was May Barbie, and she lived over on Long Beach, on Oak Island. And she had 2 small children, so she asked me if I would attend that on behalf of the Junior Women's Club. So that's really how I got on the festival committee in the beginning. And then that was our organizing meeting, and everybody came with some kind of project, or at least a representative to talk about it. and they asked me if I would be in charge of publicity for the festival, and I accepted, of course. And so then my husband, who was a member of the Moose Lodge, came home. They didn't send a representative, but anyway, he said they were talking about it in their meeting and were thinking about doing a pageant, and asked him if he thought that I would do a pageant for them, which I said yes, and got real excited about it. Then they sent me a message that they had changed their mind. They didn't want to mess with the pageant. So I was already excited about doing a pageant for the 4th of July. And a very good friend of mine was a little older than me, but she was active in all the clubs, garden clubs, everything you think. Her name was Sue Jones, and she had been president of, in fact, I think she was president of the Junior Women's Club and the Southport J-Sets at the same time. So I'd asked her if she thought one of those clubs would sponsor the Queen's pageant for the 4th of July. And she said, well, let's don't ask the Junior Women's Club because they got too much to do with the art show. But the J-Sets don't have any kind of project. So she, of course, being president, she talked them into it. So she took me to the meeting and I explained what we were doing, and they said, yeah, we'll do that. So that became the beginning of the 4th of July Queen's program. The first year, I knew nothing. Let me make that clear. I knew nothing about putting on a pageant. I knew you had to have contestants and judges, and that's about all I knew about a pageant. And I did know that it needed to be on stage and be some kind of program. So I got my people together. I say my people. They weren't my people then, but they became my people. I got a group together and we talked about it. And Miss Betty Leggett, who was a great artist, and then she was a member of an artist club, artist group that they had here. And they agreed to do the scenery for me. And then I had to find me 5 judges, and I knew somebody that knew judges, so they sent me 5 people from around the state that would judge my pageant. And then I asked somebody to go to the high school and see if we could find some girls that would like to be in the pageant, which all of a sudden everything was coming together, and we had a nice little auditorium then over at the high school before it burned. So that's where we started our pageant, and I have to tell you, that first pageant was quite something. Like I said, I knew nothing about it, but I found people that did know about it, and they jumped right on board. My judges had to tell me how to fix the ballots. So one of my judges told me what the ballots were supposed to be and how you counted the points and everything. So I put all that together for them to do their judging. And as the first year was called, it's right there in that book I just gave you, Bob. Okay. The first pageant was held in 1967, and it was at the Southport High School. And I don't know how many contestants we had, but I do know, Olivia, I think we had 6 or 8. And the funny thing is, they were going to be the treasures from the sea, and those artists, and I have to say this because nothing like this has happened before or since. Those artists went in there, and on the back wall of the auditorium, they drew, the whole back wall of the auditorium was a ship with the sails and everything. And we called it the Treasures of the Sea, and it looked like the ship was docked right here. And then we had a treasure chest, and we had little boys dressed up like pirates. We just thought we were just getting on down the road. But these were wonderful people, and I know I'll leave some out when I start talking about it, but when you started talking in this town about doing anything entertaining, like a show of some kind or a play, everybody jumped in because they loved it. And Miss Leela Pickett was the ramrod on any kind of show. And I'm sure that you've heard her name before, but anyway, Leela Pickett. So she put together all the music for me. And then the artist did the back wall, and the J-sets, they sold tickets and got the girls and everything. It was a wonderful pageant. And ironically, the girl that won, Kathy Joyner, was the daughter of the general that was in charge of Fort Johnston. And that was just, a happen so, but if you knew Kathy today, and maybe you do, Kathy is just a beautiful young woman, and she is just as nice and great today as she was that night. But I was so nervous, I didn't care who won, I just wanted to get the show on the road, get it done. So that was 1967. We didn't do a whole lot for Kathy that year because we didn't know. This is a big learning experience for everybody. But there were, from time to time, a ship would come to town with somebody notable on it, or we'd have guests in town, maybe from the General Assembly or something like that, and we would call and see if Kathy could meet with them, or there would be an event out of town that maybe she could go and represent the town and the festival. And those were just small things, so we were real happy with that, but that kind of put the bug on me that maybe there was something to having this representative for the 4th of July Festival, and what could we do more, which I didn't know. But we had a second festival, and that was Helen Faulk, and her father was the manager at Brunswick Town that I mentioned before. Her father was Bill Faulk, and she was just a beautiful little thing. So I got an invitation. Once people know that you have a queen, you start getting invitations. So I got an invitation to take her to Wilmington for the Miss Wilmington pageant, and we met a little girl over there that was Miss Wilmington. Her name was Jeannie Harden. And she just loved Helen, so she said, anytime you need to go anywhere and you need a dress or anything, just call me. So we borrowed dresses. Helen's mother sewed, so she made dresses for her to wear. And we started kind of small, but and meanwhile, I do want to say that I was a hairdresser, and I did work with girls that wanted to be in pageants. And it's just because I was the youngest hairdresser in town, so all the high school seniors, they wanted to come to me because they felt like I had the latest hairstyles. So doing that, and then I had girls coming to me from high school wanting to be in the Miss Brunswick County pageant and different things. And so I jumped right in helping them, and that helped me grow our Queen's pageant because I got to know people that were in the Miss North Carolina pageant. And so that's how we grew. We borrowed, begged, and stole, as the old saying goes. Didn't break any laws, but had a good time doing it. So then I started getting invitations to parades, like the Tobacco Festival parade and pageant in Clarkton, and all the little things around the area, festivals and everything. And I got really cranked up about that, so I started taking that girl anywhere we got an invitation. We borrowed a convertible if we had to have it, and there were people locally that had them that were just tickled to death to let us borrow it. People were so kind, so kind. And the Southport people, as they saw their girl and how beautiful she looked and knew that she was Miss 4th of July, Southport's Miss 4th of July is the way we called it in the beginning. Then they wanted to help. Then they started calling on my girl to cut ribbons, and she got to know the merchants, and it just mushroomed from there. And so then we're going to have the third pageant. And the girl that we got that year was one of the most beautiful girls before or after that I've ever seen. I mean, she was just beautiful, and she was very personable, and people loved getting to know her, and that's really how I got started. They called me the publicity chairman, but I didn't know what to do. That's how I got started doing publicity for the festival, was through the Queen's program and going out to other festivals and other pageants and meeting people and learning from them what things that would work to make our festival better. I mean, even a bumper sticker. We didn't ever think about having a bumper sticker. I went to Clarkton to the Tobacco Festival, and everybody in Clarkton, North Carolina, had bumper stickers about the Tobacco Festival. And I came back to our festival meeting and I said, look folks, we got to have bumper stickers. So the next thing I know, we've got festival bumper stickers that say Southport's 4th of July Festival on them. I mean, the people in Southport would jump right in, and they use their resources. If they had access to something, they use their resources. All I had to do was come home from an event and say, you know what I saw at this event? They did so-and-so, and oh yeah, Miss Connie, we can do that. And they jumped right on it. It was so much fun. And the reason I'm talking so much about the Queen is from that point on, the Queen and the festival were meshed. There was no separation from the Queen and the festival. And it all started simultaneously, not that things hadn't been going on prior to the time that Harold organized the festival, but the Queen's program accelerated the festival. And every time, I loved people back then. I'm not so personable anymore, but I loved people back then, and everywhere I went, I wanted to ask, well, how did you do this, or how did you get that, or where did that come from? And so that year, I was invited to judge the Clarkton Tobacco Festival Queen. And I met this lady named Judy Cross. And Judy was the business manager for the Blueberry Queen. And at that time, the North Carolina Blueberry Festival was at White Lake, North Carolina. And now I believe it's in Burgaw or somewhere. But at that time it was in White Lake. But Judy Cross and I were judges at the Clarkton Festival. And so we got to talking, and I said, well, how do you know who to contact to send your queen to different events? And she said, I'll send you that. I'll send you a list of contacts for that. So sure enough, she did. And believe me, back then we didn't have computers, everything was done by hand. So she sent me a handwritten list of contacts of festivals and pageants and things that were going on in the state that I could contact people to try to get my queen involved. And I wrote handwritten letters to all of these people. And before I knew it, my third queen was traveling about 10,000 miles that year. With borrowed cars and borrowed clothes and whatever her mother sewed too, is a good thing.
What's her name?
Her name was Cheryl Johnson, and she's as beautiful today as she was then. But everybody loved Cheryl. She had one of these magnetic smiles and could talk to anybody. She taught me a lot because with her, she was just so personable. And things that she did, like, I have to tell this one story because it's so funny. We went to the Snow Carnival of the South in Boone. And we went through the parade, and it was real nice weather. And then they took us up on the mountain to one of the ski resorts. And they took us out on the skis. Now, I didn't do too good at that. And they put us on the skis, and we were all standing there in the white snow. And we did have a photographer with us that came with the event, had an event photographer that was going around taking pictures. And so I didn't stay there very long because I wasn't very good on the skis. And So when we got back in the car, we were going back, I said, well, Cheryl, you kept falling down all the time. She said, Miss Connie, he wasn't taking pictures of the girls that could stand up. What does that tell you? And that's how our festival was built. So while we were up there, while we were at an event, there was a girl representing the North Carolina Rhododendron Festival, and which I'd never heard of, but it's up at the top of the mountains, on Roan Mountain. And when she came on stage, she was asked by the MC about the crown she wore, because it was so different from all the other people's just little tiaras and crowns. And she said they are handmade. Our crowns are handmade, and they're made to look like a rhododendron bush, you know, with the flowers and everything all around. And I thought, bingo, we must have a crown with red, white, blue stones. So that was my next project. So I came home, and we had a festival meeting, and I told them where I'd been and all this. They loved to hear where we were taking the girl. They loved it. And they wanted me to get pictures if I could. And so I was telling them about this crown that this girl was wearing. I said, wouldn't it be great if we had a red, white, and blue crown? Well, it would be. Why don't you see what you can get? Well, so then I got on, and I'm starting to look through catalogs from makers of all these crowns and tiaras, and so I picked out a design that I liked, and I handwrote a letter to all the companies to see who could make a red, white, and blue, a crown with red, white, and blue stones. Today's world, it would be easy, but back then. So I did get one back from, and a design with red, white, and blue crowns, you know, stones in the crown. And I loved it, but then the crown and a scepter, and then the bill was included. And it was, y'all gonna laugh, for the crown and the scepter, $350. $250 for the crown and $100 for the scepter. And I just about fainted. Because now, so anyway, I went to the next festival committee meeting, and I said, now, when the business is over, I've got something funny to show y'all. And so when we got through our business, I pulled out that stuff. I said, I've been trying to find somebody that would make us a red, white, and blue crown, and I finally stumbled on a company that could hand make them, but here's the bill. And, you know, and I said, ha ha. Well, Mr. C.D. Pickrell, who was the town manager at the time, looked at me, and I have to insert this. They used to call me Big Mama because the Blueberry Queen called her chaperone Big Mama, and they thought it was funny, so they started calling me Big Mama. So Mr. Pickrell looked at me and he said, well, Big Mama, do you think our queen ought to have that crown? And I said, well, yes, Pick, I do think she should have that crown. And he said, well, I don't mind standing out in front of the bank on a Friday afternoon when everybody gets paid and shaking a bucket. That's the truth. He said, I think you ought to order that crown. We're going to figure out how to pay for it. And that's how that beautiful red, white, and blue crown came into existence. So that year, the festival was so successful, and the festival made so much money, the JCs made so much money from people coming to town and buying their boat tickets, that the president of the JCs, who was Dempsey Hewitt, called me and he said, Big Mama. I said, yeah, what is it? And he said, the JCs have made so much money on their boat this year, we can pay for all of our projects, and we have a little left over, so we want to buy that crown for the Queen. And I just love that thing. He said, so go ahead and order it. Let us know when it comes. So it was Cheryl Johnson was the first girl to ever wear the red, white, and blue crown. But that crown came, I couldn't decide if I loved it or if I hated it. You know, it was so big. And when I opened them, I was expecting something totally different. I opened the box and I thought, oh my God, I didn't know if it was, I didn't know, I really didn't know to love it. So anyway, I called her and I said, the crown's here. So she got in the car and came over here. She lived on Long Beach. And so then we had a little shindig at the JC building, a little reception, and the mayor recrowned Cheryl with the red, white, and blue crown. And we had all the JCs and everybody in to see Cheryl be crowned with that red, white, and blue crown. So she was 1970, I guess.
That crown is on display in the garrison.
I know that, and I have the scepter, and I meant to bring that to you.
Oh, dear, I love it.
So, yeah, it got where the scepter lost a lot of stones, and it pulled on the gowns. And so they quit using it, except like on the float for parades and things. And then so I just stashed it away, and so I do have it. And I thought it needs to be with its partner, so I will get that to you as well.
That's fantastic, thank you.
It's my pleasure. I mean, I am so proud of this festival and how we started it on a shoestring and just a group of little people getting together, loving it. Just loving it and loving each other. That was the best thing about this. When we would get together, the festival committee, we had the best time together. And so we started thinking about events. What did we want? What kind of events did we want? And I'll be honest with you, we thought carefully about what kind of events that we wanted to have in this town. We wanted them to be clean, and we wanted them to be first class. We wanted them to involve our local civic groups in any way that they wish to participate. We did not allow any kind of food booths except those that were done by our civic clubs, like the Boy Scouts and the churches, and that we just wanted, it was a hometown festival, and we wanted everybody to be a part of it in their very special way. Whatever they could do, we wanted them to do it, and we were getting it all organized. You know, I mean, the St. Philip's Church, they sold sandwiches right there on the sidewalk in front of their church, and the Boy Scouts, they had their thing, and then we figured out that we could actually help the festival by charging a small fee for these booths, and we would, the money went into the festival. They would have, everybody had a fee like $100, depending on how big your booth was going to be, $100 to $300, and then we had to clear them all with the health department, so they would come and inspect everything. But we had all these booths between where the BB&T Bank used to be on the corner down to the Whittler's bench. And then at the Clarkton Tobacco Festival is how the street dance started. I went to the Clarkton Tobacco Festival, and they had a band playing in they had warehouses. If you've ever been to Clarkton, it was nothing but tobacco warehouses. And so everything was held in a big warehouse. And so they had a group called Men of Distinction, and I thought they were the best group I'd ever heard that wasn't on a record. So, and you got to remember now, this is the late 60s, and they were really great. So I came home and I said to my people, we need to have a street dance. And I've got the group. If we can raise the money to pay the Men of Distinction, I want them to come. And we need to have a street dance right down there at the Whittler's bench. And they jumped up and down over the thoughts of a street dance. And so that, it's just these little things I don't want to go step by step for the festival, but now you know how we got the crown. And this is how we got the street dance, and that's how we got the art shows, and that's how we got, I want you to know all these things because they're all important, because that's how the whole town became involved in the 4th of July festival in some way or other. And to support our festival, we had barbecues, homemade barbecues, that the festival committee would cook the barbecues. And it's interesting how that was done too. They were all done right down the street here at what used to be the Southport Police Station and Fire Department. And there was a gentleman that lived here at the time that had a great recipe for pit cook barbecue. And the JCs and this gentleman would go out behind in Franklin Park behind the fire department, and they would dig a pit. And they would pit cook, they'd stay there all night long and pit cook that barbecue. And then the rest of us would come in early the next morning and start folding the boxes and getting out the plates. And then we'd have to cut up the barbecue, chop it up in the pots, and then some of the restaurants would do the slaw. And so then we stayed there till like 7 o'clock that night, dishing out barbecue, and we had pre-sold it. Sometimes some offices would take, like 10 plates of barbecue, and we had our little people delivering them. And I hope you get the feel of just how much of a hometown and hometown spirit was built into this festival. I mean, it was the greatest thing that happened in Southport, and everybody lived and breathed it all year long. If you said we're doing this for the 4th of July festival because we want to have a street dance, everybody jumped on board. It was like a great big family. Everybody loved everybody, and we had our little spits and spats, and there was people that didn't like other people, and then there was sibling rivalry and all that kind of stuff that went on. But the JCs used to do a horse show, and that was well attended, and it was done right down here at the park that used to be here at Taylor Field. So they do a horse show down here, and everybody came. And that was the one thing about Southport. Everybody came. Everybody came. If there was an event, everybody came. And so those are the ways we supported the festival. And then when I went to the chamber, which was many years later, I learned about grants. And I could do grants and get the city and the county to match the grants that I could get from the state. So all of those things worked into how to fund the festival. And funding the festival was real important. Now, I was still just the Queen's chaperone, business manager, director of the pageant, and the festival's publicity chairman through that. I didn't get to actually be the president of the festival till 1982. But in 1972 is when we became the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. And the story behind that is at that time there was a new, I'd always wanted to be the North Carolina 4th of July Festival because as I traveled I realized that there were a lot of little towns all over North Carolina that had annual 4th of July celebrations. And I didn't want to forever be Southport 4th of July Festival, and then there'd be a Clarkton 4th of July Festival and a Wilmington 4th of July Festival. I wanted to be the festival. So a young attorney moved to Southport, and he was single. He joined the JCs right away and became active, and he really liked. He was attracted to the Queen's program because, I skipped some, but I'll go back. Of course I will. He liked what the JCs were doing with the Queen's program, because we had built a float, and from all the contacts that I got from Miss Judy Cross, I started writing letters to everybody all over so I'm doing a sidebar now. we're gonna get to how all these parades happen. I said to them, there was parades up in the state like the Charlotte Carousel, which was the biggest festival in the state. And then of course the festival and the Zay Festival, those big festivals. And I wanted my Queen to be able to go to those. But the Charlotte Carousel, when I wrote to them, said, we'd be glad to have your Queen, but she will have to have a float. We don't have queens on cars in our parade. So that threw me a little curve. And so I talked to Mr. Harold about it. Harold Aldridge, who was always chairman of our committee. And he said, I think we've worked that out. All we got to do is get us a farm trailer and get the Artists Association to decorate it. So the next thing I know, my Queen had a float, and we went to the show. And it wasn't the prettiest float in the Charlotte Carousel, but we had a float, and we qualified, and we were in the Charlotte Carousel parade. And so the beginning, I believe with Cheryl's year, is when we really started breaking out, because she traveled well over 10,000 miles, and consequently so did I. So she was the first one, and with the red, white, and blue crown, and now we had our own float. We were high cotton.